Two. Okay. So today's episode is about The Lost Light, episode 24. Spoilers ahead. I want to pick it up from where it's been left on the forums. The thread is about the very episode itself, and there are a couple of reactions from the fandom that I would like to talk about, in particular Swerves and Smokescreen 1980s, but also Protector Prime and UAF have said things that I wanted to touch upon. So I won't quote them directly because it would give you spoilers, I suppose. But I'll try and summarize. And what Swerve says is it's basically a summary of the episode. But if you what he makes you notice is that if you put it in certain words, it actually sounds like a fable, a fairy tale, a story, a mythos. As in Manjo Jumbo, as Sir Alec Guinness would have said. While if you actually read the episode, it's not written that way. It's more written like, journalism, or it's supposed to be interpreted and seen as reality. They talk about science, etc. It's not presented as mythology, but if it can be written out, those same episodes, those same events, if organized in the right narrative, have the structure of a fairy tale. So what this means, and what I take from what Swerve says, is that basically this episode is Big Fish the other way around. It's saying the same message of Big Fish, it's just doing it the other way around. Big Fish, the movie, what was it? Wim Wenders? No, Big Fish is, it's not Wim Wenders, it's Edward Scissorhands is by Tim Burton. So yeah, Big Fish is a story about a man who believes in fairy tales too much and sort of tells his children fairy tales. I'm not going to tell you about Big Fish. It's a beautiful film, watch it. But the point of Big Fish is fairy tales, how some people want to sort of see life and depict or explain or narrate life as a fairy tale, as a mythos, and other people want just basically to see it as the truth, and only the truth, and only science can be expressed, otherwise it's not the truth, and so. And the way this episode is taking this argument is that showing you that you can actually take the truth and present it as if it was mythology, sort of giving you the other key of interpretation, as in where not fairy tales don't have to be untrue simply because they're written in prose and exaggerated and sort of motivational. Let's just put it that way. And I think this is very nice. I like it. I like this take on the episode, and I agree with it. And the second point, the morality lock, which Smokescreen here is says very few very well said points on that, I suppose, anyways. But yeah, I found the punchline, and I lost the punchline. Let's punch the punchline. Okay, it's known as the morality lock. Why lock the matrix? Why do that? They are sealed. What's this all about? Okay, so with some spoilers ahead, I'll try and not give you too many if you want to listen in anyways, but be warned. Now, before I say what Smokescreen 1980 says, some people said they didn't like the what this story does with the Matrix because it makes it feel like less important and less singular and more just like any other thing. I disagree with this. It's not within the story. It's not like if it can be produced by just anybody, and it has also a great cost when being produced. Also, that anybody is not just anybody. It's a very specific person, and also this person has been pivotal to the whole plot of the story, and even more, this very plot line has been hinted at since the very beginning of More Than Meets the Eye, not even Lost Light. So it's a long-lasting thread that has been left hanging and that has had jokes and things and placed upon. And quite frankly, this feels like, yeah, I'm sorry, I mean, it's hard to say it without spoilers, but it's not like letting you down. It's not like, oh, I've waited like 3 years for this punchline and for this plot line to be concluded, and well, it was not as good as I thought it would be. It wasn't such a great idea behind it anyway. No, you can't say that. It's a very good idea behind it. I think it honors the whole point. It honors the character. It honors the whole story, in fact. And I'd like to quote, but I can't remember this. Anyways, the point is that it's not been appreciated how the morality lock could actually be seen as not being too different from the functionist universe of Nova Prime, which Megatron made a revolution against, and which the whole of MT, More Than Meets the Eye, and Lost Light is sort of saying that it's a bad place. And that having a matrix that can only be opened by who predeterminedly is good or bad is basically doing the same thing as a functionist or fascist universe where everybody is worth exactly what they do and not more or not less. And they have no right to more than what they are capable of. So that's what is being pointed out. And the truth is that the morality lock is not just a morality lock that determines whether you're good or bad, because otherwise it wouldn't be a morality lock, and we'll get into that. But just to point out, it is the original Matrix that didn't have a morality lock, and that in effect had the function that we just described, as in you're either good or you're not. So basically, until before this episode, the Matrix could only be opened by Autobots, and there is only one exception, and I think it's Thunderwing at some point in the Marvel UK comics. But otherwise, in all the mythos, all the lores, the Matrix can only be opened by an Autobot. Hence, also you can go back to the phrase in the movie, and Galvatron telling Rodimus Prime, it cannot be opened by a Decepticon, or whatever it is he says. Anyways, point is, that Matrix is predetermined in its choice of good. Now, and I really like Smokescreen's point, which is that the morality lock is not checking on whether you're good or bad, it's checking on whether you have a conscience. Now, I find this argument very interesting because it goes on to what the notion of being sentient is, and having a choice. So, and removing the choice removes the sentience out of it, basically. So, so basically what the Matrix is doing is checking if you actually are checking if you're being bad or good. If you have a meter, if you have a conscience that makes you ask yourself, is what I'm doing good or bad, and not only to me but to others, and etc. And to validate this point, Smokescreen 1980 points out that the whole series has had baddies, bad guys, that thought they were right when they weren't, namely big fascists like Tyrus, like Starsaber, like Tarn. All of these people think they are in the right, and they never question themselves. They're sort of like Spanish inquisitors. They're like, fascists, basically, just to put it in plain terms. And the morality lock is basically there to check that you're not a fascist, so that you're not predetermined in your choice. Which, put this in any moral way, but an animal is obliged by nature to do something. He doesn't have a choice. It's in his DNA to behave that way. A lion will kill the cubs of another lion when mating with a new lioness. It's there. It's not a choice. That's what he does. That's what nature wants him to do, and he's just not obeying. He's submitting to the laws of nature. He doesn't have the strength to do otherwise. Being sentient is the very notion of having not only the option, but having made the choice of not wanting to do that thing. Now, I'm not vegetarian, but that's a good example we can use. You're choosing not to kill animals, because plants are living things anyways. to your advantage. So the lion, the leopard can't choose what it's eating. It's not omnivore. I'm not saying that baboon can, because it's omnivore. Well, it's getting confusing, but I suppose you get me. Are you confused as well now? Because I'm very confused. I suppose I could have some coffee now. But are you decent enough to ask yourself whether your actions are good, not only for yourself and your point of view and what you want to be seen as, or what you want the world to be, but also to others and other people's perspective about it? And that is about being considerate. So the morality lock means that it's not considering whether you are morally blue or morally red or morally white or morally black. It's just checking if you are moral, if you are making a choice for some specific reason. And that makes it very interesting, I think. So we've also touched upon the importance of the Matrix and what this episode does to the very Matrix. But it also, and to conclude this, and you can't really do it if you don't, but I don't want to give you too many spoilers, I just wanted to get to the right image to talk about this point. Yeah, this could do. Panel in specific, yeah, let's do it with an Italian accent, and other panels about other characters and some romance that occurs between them is hasn't been appreciated by all the fandom. I suppose the argument at hand being that it feels a bit forced. We were saying the romance is not being appreciated because the zinc is forced. There's many reasons to say that it's not, that it's perfectly within the ethos of More Than Meets the Eye. The whole story arc from More Than Meets the Eye before it became Lost Light, and this very episode is centered on people, friends, the people you care about. Actually, Pyro's death words. I'm not going to say them, look them out. But since Roberts participated in writing that book, and it has the same moral that we're being given here, I'd say that it's perfectly coherent to his way of storytelling, and specifically to this story. It's somehow a continuation, a branch off of the messages, whatever those may be, whether you like them or not, addressed in the Rewind Chromodome couple, which are a big part of More Than Meets the Eye, and Lost Light, but less. But anyways, moreover, the relationships, and this has been pointed out by somebody in the forums, I apologize if tfw2005, I apologize if I don't remember the name. If you want recognition, say it, and I'll try and post something about it. But all the romance happens between characters that have had relationships or are building relationships between each other, and it's sort of a affirming consolidation, realization of these feelings for these characters in a moment in their darkest hour. On a nice little, I don't know if it's an Easter egg or a quotation or something, but you can see it directly in the in one of the covers. This image doesn't express it too well, but in this episode, spoilers ahead, Ultra Magnus finally, after 2 decades almost, has finally managed to open a matrix. Bravo, and I'll drink to that. And I'm very grateful to that, to Roberts. I think that was neat, and it was totally worth it, as was this moment of unity that concludes the episode, and which, in tune with the romance and all the things we've said about the morality lock, is very much embracing the whole story and the whole series, I think. Which is, and gets to my final point before I conclude, which is the connections with the other IDW comics and media. And Lost Light is apparently in a completely different setting. And the reason for this is that it's before. Basically, by the time the Lost Light finale has happened, the Unicron saga beginning hasn't even started yet. So the stories aren't even related, or more importantly, why this is pertinent is that the characters in Lost Light might appear in the finale of Unicron, and that shouldn't be in contrast with whatever is being said in the Lost Light. Still, some people are already speculating on the fact that all of these characters in the Lost Light are sort of the characters that James Robert has written and taken care of for the last 3 years or more, and that it would be quite impolite for Barber to be just killing them off as he is doing with mostly everybody in his series. Now, let's leave it at that. What I want to say is that I find that Lost Light is very different from Unicron. Now, this might be one of the reasons, but basically, it feels like Lost Light has an ending of its own and is well written towards that ending. It's not forced. It's not outside of its game. It's not going in other places and forgetting things and stuff. I mean, you might not like the where it went, but that is the story, and it's perfectly in where it was going, if that makes sense. On the other hand, Barber has, whether you like his writing or not, and I don't, his stories have suffered a lot more pressure from Hasbro, I suppose. Now, this is not to say that it's not Robert's fault, or that he isn't to blame or has to blame in this, because the whole thing of wanting to bring characters from outside the law, inside the lore, is something that started with Roche and Barber, not Roberts specifically, and in Last Stand of the Wreckers, and Impactor, and bringing a whole series of characters that came from the Japanese series Overlord, namely, but not only. This is a trend that was affirmed and confirmed in More Than Meets the Eye, and, for example, even more brought forward with Sins of the Wreckers by Roche. And it's something that Barber picked up at some point, but he wasn't doing it since the start. It's something that he picked up from Roche. And eventually Hasbro picked up on this, and they really enjoyed it. So sometime during the life of MTV, More Than Meets the Eye, we got some toys being sold together with the episodes. And while they were sort of thought to be, or thought as in, built to be going with the spotlights that had come in Phase 1, they ended up just going with More Than Meets the Eye episodes that were specifically featuring one character or another. So when Waspinator came out, we had a toy of Waspinator that was being released with the comic. And this eventually sort of pushed the narrative towards Hasbro wanted events, which, for reasons I'm not sure of, required for what do they call them? Crossover events, where all three fictions or books sort of meet up. So we started with Dark Cybertron, and then we had Titan Returns, and it got more and more toy-centric, Combiner Wars, and then Titan Returns, and so on. Power of the Primes, and now we're just rebooting. But The fact is that Barbara's story were always more victim to all this process, and while they at times influenced also the narrative on Lost Light, this was less apparent. I think James Roberts has specifically catered towards this problem in order to be able to have an ending which was free of such pressure. And you can feel it. You can feel the difference between how Unicron is ending. But that's how I feel about it. Let me know if you feel the same, if you're thinking the same things, if you agree or you don't, or you dislike what I'm saying even. I'm happy to debate them or discuss them. I hope you enjoyed it, and I don't want to take credit for any of the things that have been said by people on the forums, so I hope I mentioned them properly. If not, let me know and I'll try and do something about it. Anyways, thank you very much for listening in. I suppose from the future and me from the past, since there's nobody listening in right now. But ba whip grana whip nini ba.